All right, this is the 13th episode of On That Note. I am here with TNAN, first name Tanner, and he has the distinction of being the very first EDM artist on the channel. But I wanted to kind of dive right in to talking about the most recent track that you released called All In with Avestra, who is someone you frequently collaborate with. What I wanted to start with is the process of making EDM music is obviously different from the process of making music in a more like rock genre. Where do you start with that song specifically? Like, what came first? Was it a chord progression, a melody, a lyric, the drums? What was it?
So, funny thing, this is probably the first song I've ever had where I started with a section of the song that didn't end up making the final track.
Interesting.
So it was a melody. It was a melody and then the bass line you hear on a different synth patch. And I had it for like a 16 bar loop, and then I cut it out and started working on the drums from that, and kind of went from there, trying to see what I could come up with. But normally I try to start with a bass line, always. I don't know why, but I think a lot of the music I listen to and I'm influenced by, the first thing I notice is the bass, and I think playing kind of cello for so long kind of pushed me to listen to, what's going on at the low end, because a lot of that's, even if it's not the groove of the song, it's groove oriented. You play to the drums, but then I would say the second most important thing is kind of the bass line. You follow that also, at least for me listening. So I almost always start there. But this track, for some reason, I had the melody, a top line first, bass, drums, and then worked backwards, basically. So this is a little different for me. Got
it. And that's interesting that it ended up with the part that it started with the part that didn't ultimately make the cut. Speaking of that bass line at the intro, because you play that intro chord progression twice before the verse officially kind of starts.
Yeah.
The first time around, it hangs on that A flat, or that A flat for 2 bars, and the second time around, it jumps A flat to E flat, right? Why did you have it static for the first time and then not static the second time?
Variation, basically. I knew I didn't want a basic 4-bar loop for the whole track. Obviously, you don't want 3 minutes of the same exact 4-chord progression. So think of like little ways to variate it, adding leading tones. I did that a couple times in the song a little bit. And then just varying the chord progression in the intro, which carries over, I believe, into the rest of the song.
It does, yeah.
Just to kind of spice it up a bit, I guess, so it feels a little less repetitive.
Okay, that makes sense. And one thing too that I'm always curious about with EDM artists too is you have all of the sounds in the world available to you. Like you can make your bass tone sound, like a billion different things.
Yeah.
And rock musicians or hip hop musicians can to some extent change their tones pretty drastically. But how do you go about deciding what you want something to sound like when it could sound like anything?
Anything, yeah. I think a lot of people think because you have that, it's easier because you can do
it seems way harder.
Exactly, because I now have to limit what I should be doing. Every individual sound has to have a specific characteristic. Whereas if you're in a band, kind of where the guitar is going to sit in the mix, bass, drums, etc. So for this one, I was actually influenced by like a Malik Berry, which I don't know if you know who that is. It's kind of like a little bit Caribbean Afrobeat kind of style.
I heard that in the drums.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like reggae. That's kind of where I came up with the idea of the bass line. I love listening to The Green is one of my favorite reggae bands. And there's not a lot of high-end energy. It's just basically like the sub, but you get a little bit of sound that leaks up. So I wanted to kind of replicate that, but obviously with synths, which was kind of hard. So I think I used a sampler bass from Contact, so it's a real bass, and then layered that with two other sounds to kind of create what you hear, which is I think it came out pretty cool. It's fat,
yeah,
but it's also not in your face at the same time, and but it's melodic. So I don't know, I kind of like how that came out, but yeah, it's so hard. Originally, it sounded way different, and Julian, the guy that worked on the song with me, after about 3-4 days of me working on it, I sent it to him, and he was like, it was a super synthy bass, super high, a lot of high-end energy.
Yeah.
he was like, this doesn't work, like, you know, it doesn't sound that good. And, you know, I was like, all right, you're right. So we had to pull it back basically, but, you know, that's part of the problem. There's so many things you can do, and just because, you know, it sounds good at the moment to me there, you know, I have 50,000 options I can do, but you have to pick the one that sounds best.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do that alone. He was able to kind of corral me to like, hey, let's, you know, pull it back, mellow it back, keep it more, I guess for lack of a better term, acoustic sounding, or more live. So that's how we ended up with what it is.
Got it. Yeah. And yeah, it's a great tone, but yeah, it does definitely seem overwhelming to have all of those things to choose from. Yeah, it seems much more difficult than just like plugging a bass into an amp and tweaking the settings there. But okay, so then it moves into the verse section there. Those kind of Afro-Caribbean drums kind of things kind of kick in. Where did you just sit down and say, I want it to be this way, so I'm going to have that kind of that like dotted eighth note, 16th kind of vibe on the snare, or how did that come about?
For the drums, for me personally, I think that's the one thing I'm like, that's my forte, I think, is drums. So I always kind of know the direction I want to go in. And so I had, I think the kick was the first thing I got down, and I loved how it sounded. And so I knew from that where I wanted to go with the snare pattern on top, like you said, the dotted kind of, I don't even know how I would describe it. A little bit Latin. What I was thinking of like Latin music, basically. Like it's kind of like the same pattern, you know. But how could I vary it just a little bit, which it does, you know,
after that little eighth note section.
Exactly. So that was like my mindset with it. But then obviously the hard part was I didn't have a drum kit, and I was like, how do I get a snare that kind of sounds real, but also slaps, hits consistently. I want you to know it's electronic, but think it's real at the same time. So that was kind of like where I was trying to sit at in the drums. But even if I took the drums or the kick and the snare out, a lot of it's actually carried by like some of the hi-hats. There's a little bit of swing on them to kind of sound realistic a little bit. You know, some notes are slightly delayed to kind of create like a groove pocket. And like, honestly, if I took that out, instead of, I could have left the kick in the snare. If I took that out, the song would sound way different. Like that made the groove, which is ridiculous to me. But yeah, so that was like the
Why is that ridiculous to you?
I think it's because in the context of the song, what are you focusing on? You know, from a listener standpoint, if I listen to the song now, I'm listening to the bass, the vocals obviously is the main thing, and then some of the drums, you know. But never is the focus on the percussive instruments going on throughout. But they're creating a whole groove. If you take that out, you'll hear, you know, it sounds a lot more static.
Which is why it's so dramatic when you go to the chorus and the drums do come out.
Yeah, so that was fun. This song is like the complete opposite of what I would ever normally do, right? Because normally in electronic music, you build up into the chorus, which is supposed to be the heaviest part, you know, hard-hitting drums then. And when I had the layout for this, I had 8 or 16 bars. And when I was working with Julian on it, we didn't know what we should do. I was like, you know, like maybe like a 4 on the floor thing, because, you know, I do so much house. I was like, it's natural to me to do something like that. But it didn't work. It didn't sound right with that drum pattern and the bass pattern, how everything was set up. And so I just deleted everything. I just listened to the chords we had, and I was like, oh, this is it. Like this is all we need. Just this, and throw you know, vocals on it down the road. And then I think that's about when I was like, hey, you know, do you have any ideas we could do for the guitar? You know, like a little 8-bar kind of rhythm section. I don't want a melody, because that's what the vocals will be for, but something to kind of to be going on in the background to kind of keep carrying the like groove and momentum of the song, since there were no drums. But yeah, that was the first time we got Savannah's vocals, and you get to that chorus where everything drops out. It was just like, it blew my mind. It was so cool, because at least for what I normally deal and dabble in, that's not something you hear. You don't hear everything drop out in the chorus. This time you have to focus on the vocals. That's what's in your face. And then the verse, even though it hits harder because you have the drums and the bass coming back, it doesn't feel as emotional or as impactful as the chorus, to me at least. So I thought it was cool. It was weird to work like that, because I've never done that before, but I like how it came out, obviously.
Yeah, no, it did sound great. And so within that, I'm curious because, I mean, you mentioned one difference of when you're producing more instrumental electronic dance stuff. I mean, not instrumental, but more like less vocal oriented electronic dance music, that you have a different set of priorities. Yeah. But if you could kind of go into more detail, because this is a vocal driven song, what kinds of things do you do differently other than maybe the way you look at the chorus or like that?
For me, it's less about the musicality than it is the technical aspect when you're dealing with vocals.
Okay.
I could take a song without vocals, add vocals on top, and keep the composition the same, but what I would have to change is maybe the volume of things. I'll have to, maybe cut more of the high end off the kick. I'll have to side chain certain sounds to other sounds that you normally wouldn't to make room for the vocals. And that's kind of what this was. I didn't, besides the melody, which I actually have a version of it on my phone I can show you later.
Without the vocals?
It has the vocals, but it has it with the melody also. Okay. Because that's how it was originally done before we changed it at the end with the vocal chops. At no point in the song was I thinking this is going to have vocals on top of it. I was just producing it how I wanted to. But I knew there was nothing in the song inherently that was catchy enough, basically, to keep your attention. And that's after a week of working on it, basically, I think is when I messaged Savannah. And when we got the vocals, of course, I had to go back a little bit and move parts around to fit in between the pockets of her voice. Or, maybe like harmonies in the chords. I think I changed 2 or 3 of the chords, the last 2 chords before the chorus, to fit what she was singing, just the tone she was leading up to kind of feel like it was a build into something. But for the most part, I didn't really have to change or sacrifice anything for the vocals. They just fit, which also doesn't happen often. So like I said, like this song is an anomaly. Like it doesn't, like nothing about it is something I would ever do again, probably, or even recommend doing to anyone who asks, because it's not like a good workflow, but it happened to work. The song was full but empty enough where her voice just fit on top for the most part. The structure didn't change. I didn't have to cater to what she was singing or change sounds or patterns or the structure of anything because of her, which was just luck.
Okay, and then continuing on kind of the vocal idea, is it a situation where you just send it to her and she just picks up whatever it is, kind of, or is there, because she comes in with some really interesting rhythms that are doing some strange things, some triplets against those dotted 16ths that are kind of that gives it a nice rub at times. Is there a communication of this is what you're going for, or do you kind of just let her run wild with it?
In this case, she kind of just ran wild, because by this point we already worked on 4 or 5 songs together.
That's true.
Yeah, so we kind of had like a good chemistry. I felt like where I basically she could do whatever she wanted, and I knew it was going to come back and be good. Very rarely have I had to be like, hey, maybe can we try this or do this, or she'll do the same to me. Most of the time it just fits. And the first demo of this was, I think, the exact same as the last version of her vocal cut. Wow. Except for the last chorus. That was the only part I really had anything to say in. Because what you hear in the last chorus is when she sings I'm All In. Originally we didn't have vocals there or anything. That's where the other melody was. And I knew I wanted vocals there. I remember one day, it's always in the shower when the best ideas come, and I was like, what can we do? And I was like, I want to tie her voice in because it'd be weird to not have any vocals for the last minute, because it's like, is it a pop song? No, because it's just a random part with nothing. So I wanted to tie her in somehow, but we didn't have a concept or an idea to do it. And I had I remember in my head I was able to sing it, and then me and her started talking about the song, and I was like, well, I'm not going to sing it for her because she can sing and I can't. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of Savannah. So I was just like, I don't know if I put in a synth note or if I just typed it to her, we'll just do I'm all in or all in, something like that. And then she sent me what it was, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this fits perfect. So we were able to put that in there 2 or 3 times. But that was the only vocal feedback I believe I gave for that song.
Got it.
Sometimes on a couple of the other songs, you know, we've done, maybe we had to like move stuff or change words or, you know, like a different note, but for the most part, it's just like for me at least, she like hits it spot on. I'm like, yes, this is it.
Nice.
So that
must be nice. And then there was one thing I wanted to circle back. The bass line in the verse, it's a really interesting way that it pokes through. Specifically under the first bar and the third bar, where it kind of starts on the end of 2.
Yeah.
That seemed like a really interesting choice from my knowledge of your work for the most part. And again, because it's bass heavy, that's you know, a beat and a half without any bass.
Nothing. Yeah. Like I said, like it was a lot of the influence was from like a reggaeton vibe
with the one drop.
Yeah, and you can go. I didn't exactly, you know, like I wasn't emphasizing my 2 and 4 with the drums because you can't do that in this kind of music. It would throw the vibe off. But I knew I could get away with more, I guess, creativity or not sticking to the generic, you know, you have to have a bass at least every beat or so to keep it always a constant fat low end. And I like that because like there's like tension. Because there is. When I listen to it, you know, you hear the downbeat of the initial kick on the 1 and you're like, oh no, it's not there. And by the time it comes in, it feels like it's pulling. Yeah. But then you get a lot of these bum, 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 bum patterns in the bass line. So it kind of feels like it's speeding back up. And then on the third measure, like you said, it does the same thing. So it's like falling back and then you're getting a lot at once. So it's like an ebb and flow kind of thing. That's, like I said, like that just happened. Like this song, like I said, was, I could never do it again, to be honest. Like the way that a lot of it was structured and everything just fit together was just luck. For the most part. But yeah, I like the bass pattern originally was different. I think I did originally have it hit on the downbeat of 1, but it didn't make sense because it just felt like there's too much happening then on the downbeat. So I was able to kind of go back and be like, all right, well, how can I tweak the bass and the drums and then the kalimba sound, you know, that's doing the chorus, all to kind of have like a weird call and response, you know, not a literal call and response melodically, but as like a rhythm to kind of fill the space of where the other one isn't. So that was like a lot of it was like a puzzle piece of that instead of just like loudness or like where do you sit in the mix. So I don't know, it was a different way, I guess, of looking at how I would normally do a bass line, to kind of like trick you into thinking, oh, it's coming in now. Nope, it's not. And I think it does make it feel less electronic, I guess.
I would agree.
Because you wouldn't expect that in an electronic song. You're never going to hear a chorus or a drop where the bass doesn't hit until halfway through the first measure almost. You know? So that was like a kind of a fun way to surprise the listener.
Subvert expectations.
And myself, The first time I played it, I was like, oh, all right. This is good. I all right.
I experimented and it worked. That usually doesn't happen. So wrapping up with 2 questions I like to ask people. First off, you're, I mean, one of the most knowledgeable mixing, like sound design, crafting, frequency analyzing people that I know, however you want to put it. And I'm curious, how did you learn how to do that? What was your music education process like that you were able to make things like this that are that technically minded?
I think I want to point out first, I think part of it is also a problem. Like it's like a gift and a curse. Like I it's useful, but it's so analytical. And methodical, because you're just sitting there looking at frequencies, and I would say you learn the way I learned almost everything I do is just from listening. Listening to music, but not, you know, casual listening. You got to listen. Why is this sound sitting here in the mix? Or why is there so much stereo information on this bass line when normally you'd want it straight down the middle? Why is the kick hit like this? It doesn't sound right. Oh, well, in the context of the mix, there's always a reason.
Or there's not.
I guess. Bad. Or it's a bad mix, and then you stop listening. You don't want that. But yeah, almost all of it is just from listening to music and analyzing it. You know, I'll sit there daily 2-3 hours a day just listening to music. I won't start working on a project right away in the morning, even if I have an idea, until I've listened to other stuff, because I have to like get my ears and, you know, prepare to be like, all right, this is what a good mix should sound like.
Interesting.
Let's get into it. YouTube, obviously, also. You know, you'll learn things from there. I think I learned how to use Pro Q2, which is my favorite EQ. Well, now Pro Q3, which just came out.
Oh, where's that Pro Q money? Sponsorship.
Yeah, get on that. Fab Filter. Come on, guys. No, but it's such a good EQ. Just like the UI that you can see every frequency, any resonance that sticks out. So when I first got it, of course I didn't know how it worked. So I would watch videos and be like, this is how you mix a kick and a bass. Okay, it's a 5-minute video, I'll watch it. Or even, you know, you can learn anything you want on YouTube basically. So I'll watch like mixing and mastering engineers. Pasando's Place, I think, is on YouTube. He's a guy who's been around for like 20-30 years doing a lot of big acts. So I'll watch a lot of his videos. He'll go over what he uses, why he does it. Everything is done for a reason, and so for me, that's kind of what I look at. You know, if I listen to something, I'm not just thinking, oh, this sounds cool. My first mindset is, how did they do it? How did they make the sound design? And then how did they get it to fit in the mix? How they got it to fit? And then the only way you're going to learn is, you know, throwing stuff at a wall. Something's going to stick, right? So try 50 different things. If one of them's good, keep doing that. Vary it a little bit, maybe, to try other things out. But once you have it down, it's down, right? So it's so much trial and error. You know, like 3 or 4 years ago, if I listened to a mix from back then, it would sound horrendous. Because that's about when I started really looking into analyzing a song. Like, I'll tear a song down to look at it. If there's a song I want, I'll, you know, high cut everything above 100 hertz and just listen to the low end of the song. What's the relationship between the kick and the bass line playing? How much is it sidechained? Is there a gap between the transient of the kick and when the bass line comes in? You know, all those little things that kind of matter. So it's just a lot of analyzing the sound. And it's not that fun until you're able to use it, because then you can make something quality and good, you know? But up until that point, it's just, it almost doesn't even feel like music. Yeah, it's not, I would never probably personally call myself a musician, as bad as that sounds for you and your channel.
No, that's the most interesting, that's a very interesting idea.
I make music, but I don't think I'm a musician first. I compose and, you know, I put down the melodies I want, but I don't always know why. You know, I don't know enough of the music theory as to why does this sound good. This chord stacking, why does it work? You know, sometimes you'll have like maybe like a 1 5 7 11, and I'll be like, it's ugly, but it's not. But why? You know, and that's something I just throw down. But what I kind of shy in is like the nitty gritty work of what like an engineer would be doing, like mixing the song, making the song sound polished. That's kind of my forte.
Absolutely.
If I didn't have that skill, my music wouldn't be any better than anyone else's. I don't think that just, you know, sits in a bedroom and throws stuff at like Ableton, you know what I mean? But I just have had enough time analyzing. I feel like the advantage of knowing how to be so detailed and specific in the mix down and then in the mastering process is kind of what kind of gives it, like, your ears will be like, oh, this sounds really good, or, you know, it sounds clean, even if it's not the most creative, you know, maybe all the time.
Well, I think a big thing with that is, I've noticed talking to producers in general, is they have a lot less ego around the technicality of their music than instrumentalists do, because instrumentalists have spent so much time working on their technique, or the flashy things that they practiced for so long that they want to inject that into music in some ways. Whereas someone who's producing is just looking at the whole picture a little bit more. And it results in the thing you're talking about, where maybe something on its own isn't super like the most unique part ever, but within context it works really well.
Exactly, and that's what it is. You know, you could spend 5 hours working on maybe like the main vocal line, or like your main synth, and it could sound perfect. But if it doesn't sound perfect in the mix, in the whole track, who cares? It's a puzzle piece. It literally is a puzzle piece. If I take out one piece and I look at it, it's going to look stupid. I don't know what this is, but I'm not looking at it. It's blue, it's nice, it's pretty, cool. But if it doesn't fit anywhere, what is it? It doesn't mean anything, right? So you have to be able to, put it in there, shape everything else around it, EQ-wise or, spectrally, or push it to the sides, pan it, or, whatever you have to do to blend it in. And then it fits. Where I guess, as you say, like an instrumentalist, they're only focusing on them because that's all they have.
Yeah.
And just because they might be, the best at what they do individually, like you said, how's it going to fit into the whole context? I'm aware of, what needs to fit where and the sacrifices I have to make in the mix. They're just worried about, does my tremolo sound? I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Guitar patch.
Yeah.
Or, you wouldn't use a guitar patch, you'd have an actual guitar patch. But you get the,
or just all of it.
You get the gist of it.
I would love to hear a segment of you just like trying to think about what guitar players think about. What is the tremolo? Like, as if we're all just got tremolo pedals. All right, and then to wrap it up, what is one thing that you wished you had learned earlier, or one thing that, like, if you had learned earlier, it would have saved you a lot of time?
Oh God, that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's why I ask it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna get $1 million, so.
Okay.
If I could go back 7 years now, I think, and know one thing that I didn't know then, I think it would be probably analyzing. I think it would have to be, because that's my greatest strength now, and that's not something I did ever. I just would put stuff there and be like, yeah, this sounds good. But it didn't. But it did to my ears, because I wasn't comparing it to anything, or like, what is good? I guess you can't define it, but there are quality standards. It would probably be that, and being able to recognize. I think my greatest strength is knowing when something is good versus knowing when something is bad. I know a lot of other producers who can make good music, but they also make a lot of bad music. And so you need to know when something needs to be abandoned or fixed or changed versus not. And for me, that was the biggest thing to change. From analyzing, I was able to kind of learn, this is a quality sound or mix, this isn't. I could maybe try to fix it, but maybe not. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people, I don't know if it's an ego thing, but a lot of people don't know their stuff might suck. As bad as that sounds, you know what I mean? And everyone makes bad stuff. I make bad stuff all the time. But you need to know when it's good and when it's bad, so you know whether to continue working on it or to change it or to repurpose it into something else.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that. You stick to an idea that you personally like, but you don't have the, I guess, experience, I would assume is what it is at this point, to kind of be like honest with yourself. Maybe this isn't your best work. Maybe you can do better. That's something that I think lacks a lot from at least a lot of artists my level. There's no quality control, basically.
But thank you very much for sitting down with me and sharing your knowledge and experience, which is substantial. Is there anything you have to talk about coming up? I mean, All In just came out a couple of weeks ago, so definitely go check that song out. That'll be in the description. But anything else that you want to let people know about?
I have a song, remix, Holy You're gonna bleep that? It's okay?
It's okay.
It's called Holy Holy How many bleeps will you... This is gonna be the best prize you need. Holy remix. And then I got a couple of projects with different singers besides Vestra, or Savannah.
Yes.
Vestra is a duo now, so it's just Savannah. Besides her, I'm working.
Are you as a duo now as a Vestra?
No, I wish. Savannah, we should hook up permanently. I'm gonna send her this.
Okay,
Keep that in there.
Yeah, I will.
I need her to see that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just commission work, doing some mixing and mastering for people, commissions. So,
cool.
2019 should be a good year. I'm excited.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Trump is still president, so it can't be that good, but cut that part. You can.
I'll leave that in there.
Okay. Leave that. Well, okay.